I'd say we're a pretty normal family. Most of the time we get along, and, sometimes we fight. The big difference is that some of us are deaf, and others are hearing. So in communicating as a family, we use New Zealand Sign Language, and also spoken English. But mostly, we like to sign.
Our day starts a little bit different to most families. Myself, Zoe and Elijah have to get up pretty early to get into town for school and work, and I'm the alarm. So it's for me to physically wake up Zoe, particularly. And Elijah needs a bit of a shout and a bit of a shake. Eli, come on. Come on, it's time to get up. And then Oliver has a shake awake, which he wakes himself and leaves a little bit later than we do. There's 5 of us, and 3 of the 5 are deaf. Out of the 3, Zoe's deaf, and Carter is deaf, and Elijah is hearing. So I'm hearing. I have no deaf people in my family, come from all hearing siblings. And Oliver is deaf, and his whole family are deaf, so mum, dad, and 2 sisters.
I think with Eli, maybe he seems different because he's hearing, but to us it doesn't feel like he's the odd one out. He is really, really shy and, quite reserved. But when you get him going, he really gets into it. I mean, brothers, they're annoying, right? But I think he's cool. Carter's 3, so next year he'll be 4, and then in 2 years he'll start school. Dad? Well, he taught me New Zealand Sign Language, and has also got me into deaf culture. He's really involved with the deaf community, and with him being president of Deaf Aotearoa, he's got me into it as well. Mum? She's really, really strong. She's what you call an advocate. She's someone who speaks up. Not necessarily for herself, of course, but she does it for other people who can't.
The family life is very, very busy. I am currently the General Manager of Services at Deaf Aotearoa. We have 14 offices throughout New Zealand, and we provide services for the deaf community. So Oliver works as a freelance visual effects animator. He's had about 9 years at Weta, working on various films, and now works as a contractor. I first encountered New Zealand Sign Language at the age of 16. I was at high school here in Porirua and was going to Catholic youth camps and school holidays, and there was a woman there that was proficient in New Zealand Sign Language, and I started to learn just the alphabet and picked it up pretty quickly. At 18, I went and became an interpreter, so I was already signing proficiently before I met Oliver. He was in the Deaf Blacks, the deaf rugby team, and I was interpreting for the real All Blacks, and so we met at a rugby function.
When we met, Bridget told me her sign name, which is signed like this. So I knew that, but I didn't know her actual name. The day after that, I waited for a fax to come through from her, because that's how we kept in touch in those days. And when I got it, I saw it ended with love from Bridget. So finally, I had her actual name.
So Zoe was born in 2001. We had no idea she was deaf. Didn't really know what to look for. I was in a sort of a haze of newborn days. But Mum was the one that said, no, when I clap or when I jingle the keys, some days she'll turn and other days she won't. So at 4 months, we asked to go and have her tested. She would sit on my lap, they would do a noise behind me, but she had seen them move, so she would turn and they'd say, don't, she can hear that. Through my work, I knew that there was a test called an ABR. which is an auditory brainstem response test, which they can check that the nerve works. So I asked for that, and they said no. Because I knew what it was, they thought I was bolshy and shouldn't have asked for that particular test. A new audiologist came to Wellington Hospital, and his common practice was to do these ABRs. He was from overseas, and he said, this kid hasn't had an ABR yet, you need to do one of those. Lo and behold, we do the ABR, and confirmed that she was what they call moderate severe, so sound has to get to about 80 decibels, and then she can hear it. So that'll be why she used to squeal, because she could get herself to 80 decibels and hear herself. That was the auditory loop. Very loud.
People assume that deaf people can't hear music, but I can, and I really love it. I just turn up the volume 100%.
Regardless of deaf or hearing, we had decided that New Zealand Sign Language would be our children's first language. So for Zoe, obviously turned out she was deaf. Score, she was already signing, and that was her first language. And when it came time for her to transition to school, we wanted her to be in an environment where she could just relax and learn in her language that was visual, didn't want it to be interpreted, didn't want it to be mediated through a teacher aid. We wanted her to engage with her teacher. And I managed to get a job in Sydney at Thomas Patterson School, which is an Auslan, Australian Sign Language bilingual school. And so we relocated to Sydney. But it just meant she got to learn all her foundation learning, maths, English, social studies, those kind of things, in a visual language in a really relaxed, normal classroom. She had 2 years of schooling in Sydney. The cost of living in Sydney is a lot more expensive than it is over here. So we decided to come home.
When I first moved back to New Zealand, I was pretty lucky to have one teacher at primary school who'd picked up some sign language before I arrived in the class. I also made friends with a hearing girl. I'm still friends with her. And she'd sit and hang out with me, which was cool. And then she learnt to sign as well.
Yeah, so we met in year 9 when we started school.
Yeah, the first day at morning tea.
Nearly 5 years.
Yeah.
So when I first met Zoe in year 9, I had never, I didn't know sign language. I had never met a deaf person before. I really just didn't know anything. For, our connection with myself and Zoe, we have a greater connection because we sign together, because she can understand my emotions and my feelings and stuff a lot more than other people can, because it's easier to say when it's not said out loud.
Definitely involved as you go.
Yeah.
And the Sisters of Mercy have offered us their foyer, which is great.
I've had an interpreter for quite a long time, Angela. She's been with me almost 9 years, since I was year 4, and I'm now year 13.
And then you all have your individual contexts, which is, for Maya, doggy wear. I really want to call yours a mini collection.
Mini, okay.
Yeah. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Well, my cousin is getting married next year. I don't know if she'd want to use something I made, but it'd be really cool to design a wedding dress.
I was going to ask you another question.
I know that I can trust what Angela will say. And I know that she knows my signing. So, I really trust what she's saying.
Yeah, because I know Zoe fairly well. I know when to interrupt her or when to get her attention, or when actually she's probably just interested in doing her own work. I can't be interrupting her every second of the day saying what everyone in the room is talking about.
Yeah?
So it's really good to have an interpreter. But I know a lot of deaf kids don't have one. So, of course, I can really understand how the education could fall behind.
There was a real struggle for funding. continues to be, I think, for many families, because $17 an hour for a teacher aide is not going to pay for a professional interpreter. So for about a year and a half, we self-funded the sign language interpreter to make sure that Zoe could have access in her mainstream school. And we ended up going to a Human Rights Commission and we laid a complaint, went through nearly 2 years of mediation. And the outcome was that Zoe has her sign language interpreter funded. And the difference between having a mishmash of good-hearted, well-meaning teacher aides who knew some sign through to a proficient sign language interpreter that's able to facilitate communication and build independence. I mean, Zoe's just been able to become this adult who manages her own communication, manages her own environment, and confidently then imparts her language and culture to her friends.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sign Language Club. Summer. Winter. Flowers grow in spring. They pop out of the ground.
The main thing for me with teaching is relationship and togetherness. I thought that I needed to kind of show Zoe that I guess that I really see her and that I really value her. So I went to night classes. Then I set myself a challenge of coming up with a public way of sharing with Zoe the fact that I had been learning sign. I asked Angela to help me translate one of my favourite songs and we performed it to Zoe. When Zoe started looking at me, I realised it was the first time she'd ever looked directly at me and I was communicating directly with her without anyone else mediating that, and I cried and so ruined all my sign faces.
What class did you just have?
I had bio. Sometimes when we're having conversations between our friend groups, sometimes Zoe will say something like really witty and really funny, and it kind of just cracks like all of us up. It's like really, like we've had all of this kind of like consensus, like, oh yeah, today was one of our national languages. So I don't understand why there isn't kind of the same kind of consensus about sign language.
So I've nearly finished school. This is my last year. And like, wow, I'm really proud of what my parents have fought for and done for me with my education. But now Carter's about to enter the world of education and I'm like, ugh, everything should be set up for him, but it's not. They have to start again. You know, all the work that's been done for me, all the doors they've opened, why can't that just be there for Carter? Like, come on.
There's about 100 deaf kids born a year in New Zealand. The difference is now children are given bilateral cochlear implants pretty quickly. And if you have an audiogram that looks like Carter's, where he has no response, so he hears nothing really, pretty much those kids are implanted within a couple of months of that identification being confirmed. We declined that offer, and again, that's a rarity. We stewed over it for months. It's not a quick fix. It takes a lot of work, and I've seen families for whom Carter's cousin, for example, excel. He speaks so well, he listens well, he signs, he's doing it, and that works really well. But I've also seen other kids for whom it doesn't work. I've seen families who have been devastated because they put all of their hopes in this device working for their child and for speech and listening to be the focus, and come age 4 or 5 it hasn't worked for them. I just want a really confident, articulate little boy who gets to grow up normally having a strong first language and knowing who he is within the wider deaf community. When Zoe got to the age of being able to get a learner's licence, it wasn't until then that I realised, how do you do lessons with a deaf kid? How do they watch the road and watch mum or dad at the side saying to them, you need to be accelerating, you need to do the brake? And so I've not done any of it. I've left that to Oliver because I don't think Zoe and I would gel well in a confined space like that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, deaf people can drive. NZSL is a visual language, so we're wired visually. And of course we can. I mean, we're not perfect drivers. Just like anybody, mistakes can happen. With Zoe, I find I have to use signs a lot, like slow down.
Sometimes it's annoying. Like, Dad will be trying to get my attention, and I'll be like, no way, I can't just drive with one hand. I mean, you shouldn't drive with one hand, and I'd have to sign back, right?
There was an instance where Zoe lost control of the car and crashed into the house. It was unfortunate, but hey, that happens. Initially, I thought everything was okay, but actually, she kind of freaked out a bit.
We are quite a close family. We have morning teas and dinners together. So lots of deaf dinners go cold because they'll leave it and have the chat and then eat, and then the food's cold. But that's life. You can't expect a family to just sit and you've either got to eat or you've either got to talk. It's hard things like when Oliver's in the toilet forever and you can't shout out and go, get out of the loo. We used to write in bits of paper and I would shove it under the door saying, hurry up. Things like that, where as a hearing person you would bang on the door. Arguing in our house, I think, is like any other house. But there have been examples where Oliver and I have been going hammer and tongs in New Zealand Sign Language and people are going, oh, that's such a beautiful language, not realising that we were having an argument. But very quickly you can do a look like you can for hearing kids. But it is useful. Say for Elijah, who is hearing, I've been able to tell him off in NZSL and people are being none the wiser.
Sometimes signing can tell a better story of your emotions, your body language, your facial features. I do prefer to sign my mum, and I sometimes have to balance it. I like to sometimes talk if I want to just talk to my mum. If secretly even. And then, but normally like when we're at like having dinner or something like that, we would normally sign, so like the whole conversation would be, like everybody would be involved. I sometimes randomly start signing to my friends who don't even know that I can sign.
With Elijah, he's quite interested in politics, which has been surprising for me, but one of his goals is to work in government, diplomacy, or the UN, that kind of thing.
My sister and I weren't interested in the whole deaf rights. We were 10, 11, 12, 13 even. Ever since my sister went to youth camps and had friends around the world, that kind of influenced her idea of the whole subject of this needs to happen. Why isn't this happening? And that's kind of the same thing with me, but more broad, in a broad sense.
I've got a whole lot of photos in my room. My deaf friends and my hearing friends as well. Most of my deaf friends I met in camps in Australia and America. Like, for instance, my friend from Germany, he also likes to listen to music. I mean, I honestly thought I was the only young deaf person in New Zealand who liked to listen to music. I mean, I only know kids who can hear music that are into music. Anyway, I didn't ever think that there could be another deaf signing person out there who's like me. In the deaf community, there are a lot of older deaf people who hang out all the time. But in terms of deaf people around my age, there's not very many. So I'm trying to get deaf young people together so that they can also have what these 20-year-olds have.
When I was little, I could not hear because I just lost all my hearing. And I didn't get hearing aids until I was 3 years old, which was a long time. And then I got my first cochlear implant when I was maybe 5, and then I could hear very well. It's like being in 2 different worlds, being a deaf world at nighttime or when I want, and then a hearing world at school. My cochlear implant can't really filter out all the sounds around me. And there's this program called Scan, and I don't like it because it just takes out all the voice that sound outside when I go outside, and then my voice is really quiet, and same with the person next to me, which I don't like, and because then it's not just real, and it's just easier to sign and just focus on that thing. And I like to sign with my friends, but at school I'm the only deaf kid.
I mean, do you know other deaf kids your age, Lizzie?
Some have moved to Auckland, like Riley and Caden, they moved. Some are down in the South Island, and some don't sign at all.
At the moment, I think that many deaf youth are really kind of isolated. They don't often meet up as a community, and there aren't many events for them. So a lot of them end up feeling quite lonely and isolated. And I think there are a lot of people like Lucy out there, a lot of deaf youth who would really like to get together more.
Zoe's a lot like me, in that she's interested in design. In the past, when I've asked her if she's keen to get involved with advocacy or be on a board or community committee, she hasn't really been all that interested, whereas Bridget and I are very involved. However, after coming home from the UN Youth Declaration in Auckland, I saw a shift. She'd begun to realise the importance of governance and advocacy for future generations, and for all of us. So I've seen a real change happen in her between the ages of 15 and 17.
Alrighty, so got our list. Set up TripIt. Have you set it up on your phone? So I went to World Federation for the Deaf Congress in Turkey 4 years ago and presented there. And it was announced that Paris was going to be the next site. And Zoe has been obsessed with Paris since 6 or 7 years of age. And so pretty much 4 years ago, Oliver and I talked and said, if we can pull together the money, we will try and make it a family trip to WFD Paris. In the meantime, then it was decided that Deaf Aotearoa would put a bid in to host 2023's Congress. Oliver became president of Deaf Aotearoa, so he needs to go just to lead that bid process, which is really exciting. And my boss asked me to submit an abstract to see if we could present about our early intervention service.
Every 4 years, WFD hold a congress, a massive conference where people present from different countries all around the world. They present all about their culture and homelands, and I'm going to be one of the youth representatives there because I'm in the New Zealand Youth Board. So there's 4 of us from New Zealand going.
We have started packing about 2 weeks ago. So we've got a week in London, 2 weeks in Paris. We will be able to do things that all the kids have sort of decided they want to do. Mum and Dad decided that they'd like to have a bit of a farewell for us, so my sister Avril has offered to host us all in my big family. Some are really proficient signers, some are definitely bilingual, and some are still learning their way with some New Zealand Sign Language. As long as you're communicating, that's the important part. For Zoe, the World Federation for the Deaf Congress is a pretty incredible environment to be in. The languages that are there, the variety of deaf people, for Zoe to experience that in and of itself will be phenomenal.
I know I'll learn a lot, just from being around the WFD culture. And I know a little bit of international sign language at the moment and what's happening on the international scene, but it'll be cool to learn more about that in an adult context, and also how youth are involved in the international deaf scene.
You can see